Well, I think the safest place to live is in the center of God's will. And safety is not what He calls us to. He calls us to sacrifice. And we live in a world where sacrifice is something that we don't want to be involved in. But sacrifice is in the very heart of the gospel. There is no gospel without the sacrifice of Jesus. And He calls us literally to lay down our lives. So when it comes to talking about the requirement for safety, or how we respond to safety, I think we have to be willing to go wherever God calls us, even if that means laying down our lives. And I think that the church grows in the midst of persecution and trial and difficulty. Sometimes where the darkest night, that's where the gospel light shines the brightest. And in difficult circumstances, people are open and hungry and ready. So if Jesus says do something, go. That's where you're safe. It's interesting, we had a missionary come to Uganda to plant a church, another church, and his family were very much opposed to what he did. But a year later, his brother was just shot in a drive-by shooting in Montreal, where he came from. So for his brother, he may have felt, hey, I'm safe here. The safest place and the most secure, the most beautiful place is in the center of what God calls us to do.
Before we went to Uganda, you know, I had a die to Jesus moment. I was reading in Luke, and it said, if you want to be my disciple, this is what you have to do. You have to take the things that are dearest and best to you, whether plans or people, and kiss them goodbye. That's in the Message Bible. The King James Version actually says, hate your mother and father, even one's own life, and take up your cross every day and follow Him. So if you want to really do what God wants you to do, I believe that He can replace fear with faith. We had only been in Uganda just 3 months maybe. Gary was away in Kenya picking up our missions vehicle. I was all alone with our kids. And in the middle of the night, 25 men came and tried to break down a simple wooden door that I could have broken down myself. I could hear them pounding on the door saying, you open, we're going to kill you, we're going to rape you, we're going to do this, that, and the other thing. They started shooting. The bullets were whizzing over our roof. It sounded like somebody had a giant pot of popcorn on the stove cooking. I'm not going to tell you I wasn't afraid. I was terrified. I went and I got my 3 kids. I hid them under my bed. But you know, I heard a voice. And that voice said, get up, girl. I didn't bring you here to be paralyzed by fear. I brought you here for a reason. And I had to make what I believe is probably the most important choice I've ever made in my entire life, next to being a follower of Jesus and marrying the most wonderful man in the world. But I had to choose, was my fear going to be stronger than my faith? Or was my faith going to be stronger than my fear? And I chose to believe that if God could keep 25 men out of that simple wooden door, there is nothing in this world that He cannot do.
You don't change the world by looking after your security. You change your world by laying down your life.
Yes.
God will look after you.